The Starside Prophecy by Tirri. Read by the author. Chapter 50. Thaddeus and Lorena. When man's collective karma is near to being settled, a new epoch begins. This is a cyclical occurrence, coming around every 2,000 years, give or take. During periods of closure and renewal, the Department of Weather Management is really busy. Thaddeus had just arrived home. He had spent several long hours helping to bring alive an aggressive weather system so its impact would present the harshest conditions to those scheduled to survive it. Those not scheduled to survive the system he had conjured would soon arrive home to the mists, relieve their life plans had been executed, indeed happy about it. Thaddeus stood alone on his roof terrace, waiting for his girlfriend to wrap up for the day. He was sipping vermouth and looking down into the fountain in the square below. He began to count the coins that he had thrown in there. Farthings, guineas and crowns. Some were thousands of years old, but had never tarnished. Thaddeus wondered about all the things he had wished for. Lorena was one of them. During his recent work commitments, Thaddeus and his girlfriend had been as passing ships in the night, grabbing a meal together if time permitted. But this evening they would be together, and the next day too. Thaddeus had not yet mentioned to Lorena what he knew would scare the living daylights out of her. He would pick his moment and make it sound casual. One of Thaddeus's co-workers had just returned from a vacation on a mineral-rich planet where jade was as abundant as sand on Earth. Thaddeus had asked him to pick up a trinket for his girlfriend, and his co-worker had brought back a one-of-a-kind bracelet he had bought from a blind peddler. The pieces of jade had been smoothed into small heart-shaped mounds and linked to 30 others by tiny copper rings, forming a bracelet perfect for Lorena's delicate wrist. The bracelet was now nestled in a small velvet gift box and tagged with a message: "You are more beautiful." Thaddeus smiled when he saw Lorena. Her shift was over, and she had just left the Karmic Justice Building. As she made her way across the square, she looked up to the rooftop of the Department of Weather Management, but could not see Thaddeus. She waved anyway, knowing that if he was there, he could see her. She and Thaddeus shared the penthouse apartment, a relatively new arrangement and a happy one. The roof terraced at night, blanketed by the stars above, was her favourite spot. She would lie on the chaise, her cat kneading his paws into her tummy, looking up into the vastness of the universe, wondering and marvelling and pondering. The roof terrace was also the perfect place to create her artwork. Lorena's most recent trilogy of paintings consisted of a cloud mass taking form just off the coast of Africa. Each painting looked so lifelike that at first glance the watercolours appeared to be silligraphs. The first painting was of a cloudy white swirl highlighted by silvery streaks emanating from the moon. This painting was of the energy mass in its most benevolent form. The second painting was of the same churning white swirl that had tightened into a ball as it progressed its journey eastward. This painting had the markings of terror in it. The third painting was of a fully formed typhoon bearing down on its target. The deadly energy mass was scheduled to hit Asia at 4 p.m. the following day, and Parish 3 was preparing for the arrival of several thousand souls who would be returning home more or less simultaneously. It would be a busy time at the Mists. The music bearers and the guides were on standby, and those in communications would soon be busy answering the prayers of all those left behind. Lorena gave Thaddeus the paintings as a gift the previous week, but she had no idea she had painted a future event. Thaddeus had to conceal his shock. His girlfriend was starting to display psychic tendencies that were a surprise to him and still unknown to her. Thaddeus's first thought was to wonder why. Every soul had gifts, but the gift of foreknowledge, to the degree that Lorena obviously experienced it, was highly unusual, not to mention taboo in some of the developing regions of the universe where it was assumed to undermine the purpose of free will. Lorena and Thaddeus's bond had started to deepen when both realised they shared a mutual fascination for the breathtaking extremes of Mother Nature. But still, Thaddeus didn't like to talk too much about his actual work life with his girlfriend. Dinner conversation was not exactly bubbly when it centred on the goings-on at his office. "How was your day at work, dear?" 9,581 dead, and that's just in Asia. 9,581 bereft families, many of whom will never be able to overcome the loss of their loved ones. How was your day? Lorena opened the door, kicked off her shoes, and called out her boyfriend's name. Thaddeus was waiting for her on the terrace on his chaise, which was also his favourite spot. He had a grin on his face and a small box perched on his forehead. He patted the space next to his knees. Lorena smiled and kissed him on the mouth. When she was seated, Thaddeus jerked his head forward and the box landed in her lap. Lorena laughed like a child, and then she pulled out the package she had been holding behind her back. "Open yours first," she insisted. As Thaddeus peeled away the tissue paper, he was faced once again with the reminder that his girlfriend had seen the future. It was a small-framed watercolour. Wow, Lorena. The mudslide with floating cars and uprooted buildings looked more real than the real thing, scheduled for the following Tuesday at 10 a.m. They would have to have that talk really soon, he thought. Lorena, that is technically and aesthetically the most brilliant thing you have ever painted. It's so, lifelike. Thank you. You don't think it's a bit macabre? A little, but nothing like Goya, so don't worry about it. Who's Goya? An old friend of mine. I'll introduce you. He's a lot of fun. Now, time to open your gift. Smiling, Lorena pulled on the loose ends of the green sparkly ribbon and slowly opened the box. When she saw the jade bracelet nestled inside, her mouth was the next thing to slowly open. Oh my God, it's beautiful. The green matched Lorena's eyes, and the hearts matched the love she had for her boyfriend, a powerful being who had the shittiest job in the world as far as she was concerned. Thad, I love it. I love it. I'm never going to take it off. Never. Good. I had hoped you would say that. Here, let me secure the clasp. Lorena held out her wrist and Thaddeus fastened the bracelet around it. He then kissed her hand, noticing she had painted each fingernail a different colour. Red, pink, cerise, purple, lavender, blue, yellow, orange, auburn and green. What's with all the colours, my love? I'm into rainbows. I keep seeing them in my mind's eye. How many rainbows did you create today, Thad? Thousands. This was a lie, but there was no need to disappoint her. That's nice. Rainbows are nice. When people dream about finding the pot of gold at the end of one, it means they have hope. Hope is a good thing. Yes, it is. Thaddeus didn't know what else to say. The reality was that he created what felt like hopeless situations all day long. But what choice was there? His job was to manipulate the elements as a means of stirring a soul from his self-imposed somnolence. The spiritual aliveness arising from the certainty of calamity or the possibility of death was seen afterwards by spiritually aware souls as a gift, or, at the very least, an opportunity for speedy progress. Lorena looked deep into her boyfriend's eyes and wanted to ask him how he stayed so buoyant given his job. But before she could speak, he sealed her lips with his forefinger. Hold out your other hand. I have another surprise for you. Thaddeus focused his attention, and a holographic image of a miniature rainbow began to assemble. As it grew in intensity, the colours matched the colours of Lorena's fingernails. Lorena watched in delight as the fully formed rainbow began to close around her other wrist. 2 exquisite bracelets, but neither as beautiful as you. Lorena leaned towards Thaddeus and kissed him, a kiss that might have lasted forever had it not been for the persistent double chime alerting Thaddeus that he had a new message from the nighttime controller. The message read, "All systems go. No refinements necessary. Enjoy your evening." Lorena stood and made her way to the edge of the terrace so Thaddeus could reply. She leaned against the railing and once again looked up at the enormous planet suspended above her. The usual swirls of white cloud were minimal this evening, and Lorena could see the peaks and ridges of the snowy Himalayan mountain range. Earth looks so beautiful from here, don't you think? I do, said Thaddeus, walking over to join his girlfriend. Thaddeus and Lorena stood silently with their arms around each other to take in the masterpiece that Melchizedek had long ago envisioned from the unseen and brought into corporeal existence. Lorena kept her arm around her boyfriend's waist while wondering whether she should tell him of her recent escapade to Spain. Lorena had learned to keep many secrets from Thaddeus. It was a difficult balance, to possess a restless spirit and to be in love with a man whose ultimate allegiance was to the smooth running of a machine that required strict adherence to protocol. She wanted to tell him, indeed she had wanted to tell him a lot of things during their time together, but not burdening him with information he was better off not knowing seemed important. Lorena, look at me. Lorena did as she was asked. Thaddeus was squinting slightly, his smile playful. You're looking at me strangely, Thad. What's on your mind? You. Me? Yes, you. I know you keep secrets from me, but you don't have to. And Lorena, just in case you were wondering, I know more about you than you think I do. Like what? Asked Lorena, biting her lip. Well, for starters, I know you took off a Vigo Pontevedra and had to be rescued by Gwendolen because you couldn't deal with the low vibration of energy. And I know that you didn't tell me because you believe a conflict of interest exists between us. Lorena swallowed. She had 1,000 questions, but the first one concerned his knowledge of her recent breach of protocol. How do you know about the Spain thing? Yes. Melchizedek. Thaddeus's eyes were smiling, but she felt like a naughty schoolchild. Melchizedek? Yes, Lorena, he is the all-seeing and the all-knowing. Even if you wanted to keep something from him, you wouldn't be able to. He is us. None of us can. Lorena walked back to the chaise and sat down. She was troubled by the notion that what she had been certain was a secret wasn't. Why had no one said anything? Thaddeus followed behind, and when they were both again seated, he picked up Lorena's hand. Don't worry, Melchizedek has bigger fish to fry, and if you were going to be reprimanded, it would have already happened. Now, I have another surprise for you, and it's a good job you're sitting down, because it's a big one. What? Asked Lorena, frowning. Melchizedek has invited us to spend the evening with him at his place. Us? At his place? Are you serious? Yes, I am. Kane is expected to show. Alusha is going to bring her boyfriend, Yanni, and Gwendolen will be coming with her Justinian. Salvatore will only leave the restaurant when he is sure his replacement chef can hold fort, and no one knows yet if Florence will join him. Oh, was all Lorena could manage to say. The thought of being in the company of the hierarchy was totally overwhelming. Thaddeus laughed. He'd spoken to Gwendolen that morning and mentioned to her that Lorena had never been to the observatory and so would likely find the situation overwhelming. Gwendolen had quickly gushed a list of intricate instructions on how to make Lorena feel at ease, after which Thaddeus had promptly said, "OK, Gwen, gotta go. I have 4 riverbanks to burst, a fault line to separate, 3 cyclones to whip up, a pandemic to implement, a volcano eruption to spurt, 2 wildfires to ignite, an ice storm to set in motion, 6 sinkholes to unplug, the de-anchoring of an enormous glacier, not to mention the maintenance of a 4-year-old drought. I am sure Lorena will be fine, and if not Gwen, she has you to show her the ropes. See you later, baby." Lorena sat quietly, but her thoughts were racing. What would she say? What would she wear? She knew Thaddeus would guide her, for he had been to the observatory countless times. But she was just a lowly tech, a button presser. She had never stepped foot inside Melchizedek's private world, and she had never expected to. "Are you going to change?" inquired Thaddeus, rubbing his girlfriend's hand. "Yes, Thad, I'm not going in this." Lorena had on a pair of grey leggings and a long white grandfather shirt. "I think you look great." Lorena groaned, but she was no longer listening. Her mind was assessing a whole host of possibilities. She jumped up and headed inside, catching in her periphery the enormous glass dome on the observatory on the other side of the square. Lorena showered and then she blew her hair dry and flat-ironed it. Then she walked into her closet, and 15 indecisive minutes later she walked back out wearing a floor-length black velvet dress. She then sat down on the edge of the bed to buckle the ankle strap of her stilettos. Now it was time to apply some fresh makeup, which was not easy because her hand was shaking. 30 minutes later, Lorena surveyed her reflection in the mirror. She was less nervous now, but she was overwhelmed and expectant, and a little bit excited. In her head she began practicing what she might say to McIseldeck. "Hello, and thank you for inviting me. You have a lovely view." Or maybe she should just come clean and get it out of the way. "I am so sorry for what I did. I don't know what came over me. It will never happen again." Or, "I don't think I ever want to go back to Spain. What a miserable, sordid place that was." No, that would be rude. Maybe, "Thank you so much for inviting me. It is a great honour and privilege." Yes, that sounded better.